Welcome, Taurus, to a new cosmic chapter. Saturn, the planet which rules time itself and the big patterns in the sky, returns to the delicate 12th house of your situation on the 14th of February. If you recall, Saturn made a brief visit for just over 3 months, from the 25th of May to the 1st of September. So you got a little bit of a taster of how Saturn may play out last year, particularly because Saturn and Neptune, which moved into Aries on the 30th of March, were so close together. Now, Saturn's going to be in Aries for the next 2 years through to April 2028. What does that mean for you, Taurus people? I'm going to unpack that for you, but I'm going to share with you, as you can see on the screen, the event chart, because we can say that Saturn is in your overall 12th house, which it clearly is. But we need to understand that at the exact moment that Saturn arrives in Aries, what's the relationship with the other players? Because for you personally, it's actually really quite positive. And Saturn has a reputation, of course, of being quite dark, maybe limiting, can cause some issues. And that is still possible. But I think for you personally, there is a chance for you to grapple with Saturn's energy in a very dynamic way. I'm going to take you all through this. I'm also going to give you the opportunity towards the end of this video to get a very powerful guide of how to deal with Saturn. Stay with me for that. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you're a returning visitor, your views, comments, and likes are truly appreciated. I've started to get quite a few hypes. Thank you if that's you, and please hype if you can. If you're new to the channel, a warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe, please help the channel to continue to thrive. So on the screen, Saturn and Neptune, which come into the exact conjunction for the first time in 37 years on the 20th of February, are for you in the 12th house. And the 12th house is quite psychological. And I think it's possible last year that you did shake out of your world some people or situations which no longer serve your greater good. Or you may have activated something that's still in the process of ending. Now, that depends on you personally, what that is. It may have been a job you've done for a long time. It may have been a company you've worked with a long time. It may have been somewhere you've lived. But something in your world could still be coming to a natural close. And that is still possible over the next couple of years. But the optimism for you comes from the fact that your ruling planet Venus is in a very strong alliance with the North Node. And the North Node in Pisces is very much to do with instincts. You're instinctively being guided towards a new future, which I think is more creative, more artistic, but also more sociable. And that runs counter to the basic concept that Saturn's in your 12th house, and therefore it's all going to be psychologically hard work. Now, the fact that you will need to work at your psychological well-being over the next couple of years is still true. And part of that, I think, for all of us, but particularly in the Western world, is coming to terms with pride. Because if we are too affected by pride, it can in some ways stop us from being more vulnerable. Because at times, it's important to be vulnerable enough to let the things go which aren't working for us. But I think that you're going to forge some very powerful alliances over the next couple of years. It could be romantic, it may be around your business situation. You still have a powerful trio in the sign of Aquarius, including Pluto. So in your chart, Pluto is the most dominant player because it's nearest to an angle and it's the most northerly planet in the chart. So for you, transformation around what you do for a living or how you connect to the wider world is a given. But what are the challenges? Well, the sun in that 10th house of work, connection to the wider world, can be to do with community activities and where you show leadership. That's in a square with Uranus. So Uranus has been with you all but those 4 months last year, full time since March 2019, and it's been shaking things up. You may have embraced new novel approaches that in the past just would not have called out to you, such as astrology. It may, however, have been the case that you've had a little bit more confidence to show some sides of your nature that are a bit zany or brilliantly far-sighted. So you may have really had an exciting journey, but it probably has at times been unsettled and maybe a little changeable. So that square between the Sun and Uranus suggests that when it comes to your work, you're not going to find it easy to lean into the expectations of a big organization. So though you have a reputation of being, very steadfast and not liking change and liking a degree of continuity, you can continue over these next 2 years to shake out of your world what's no longer working for you. But another brilliant aspect for you in your chart personally is the moon's in an opposition with Jupiter. Now, the moon technically is not brilliantly happy in Capricorn, but it suggests when it comes to earning money and creating security, along with that square between Uranus and the Sun, you're going to want a degree of independence and freedom. Don't be surprised if you do something that requires you to be nimble of mind or body, so quite flexible. But also the potential for a lot of conversation, and that's exciting. So, the outcome of this opportunity for you is you can raise your profile still, but it's probably going to need to be on your terms. There are going to be some people who do show up as not being worthy of you, Taurus, to be honest. So, any fair weather friends, I think they are going to make way in your situation. And just know Saturn this year gets up to just over 14 degrees. By the 26th of July, it goes into a retrograde. It retreats 7 degrees by the 10th of December. And as ever, the annual 5 month Saturn retrograde can be a time when things slow down. And that may be a time when you do have to look a bit deeper into the roots of your being to understand your psychology, your deeper motivations. But also, it may be where you could be more easily wounded by the lack of faith or the lack of decency with others. So do watch for that retrograde. We do have some aspects coming up that I wanted to mention to you. So your ruler Saturn does apply to your ruler Venus, sorry, does apply to Saturn on March the 8th. If you have been struggling with a romantic relationship, I think that's going to be a pinch point. Also, March the 25th, it's the Sun's turn to apply to Saturn. Again, quite quickly, you could have a test or a challenge about whether to keep someone in your life longer term. Because remember, we're starting a new 29.5 year journey. And if you're not with the right person, change it. But the opportunity to use your instincts and your insights really comes to the fore on March the 28th with Saturn forging a brilliant angle to Pluto. So past experiences and knowledge can be repackaged in a way which are very fortunate for you at that time. But we do have two squares. We have one in July, the 6th, and just at the end of the year when Saturn is squaring off first with the Sun in Cancer, for you, a chatty part of your chart, and then later in the year, the Sun in Capricorn. So although the moon opposite Jupiter on the event chart suggests conversations can be very bright and breezy, I feel that if there is going to be some tricky moments, it may be around those 2 days. We're also going to see on April the 19th a conjunction between Mars and Saturn. If there's a sense of injustice in your world, maybe you've been very sacrificing at work, in a relationship, supportive of an elderly parent, something where you've really put a lot in and you're not really being celebrated for it. I think that could be a trigger point for your feelings to come much closer to the surface. Now, please check out your monthly video for February, Taurus, because we've got a hugely powerful solar eclipse on the 17th. We've also got in the last week of this month a very challenging right angle between Mars and Uranus in your zodiac sign. But we do have a wonderful angle between your ruler Venus and Jupiter in the last week of February. So please check out your February video and see beneath this video for that free guide to work your way through this next 2 years. Now, one of the intriguing things about the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune on the 20th of February at 0 degrees is that 0 degrees is the vernal point. So the start of the zodiac. It's where on the spring equinox, the whole journey begins again. So having the combination between Saturn and Neptune there is particularly intriguing to me because there's a form of astrology called Draconic astrology, where the North Node is moved from wherever it is in the natal chart to 0 degrees Aries. And that can change a chart quite a bit. But the person I want to give you a little bit of an insight to of how this works is Madonna. So on the screen is Madonna's nativity, and she was a Leo. So obviously, a person who's a performer has to have a degree of glow and radiance and magnetism, and having the sun, but also Uranus in the sign of Leo, along with Venus. Venus, I think, is the love of theatrics. Uranus is the confidence to be different. I think the sun being in the third decan of the sign of Leo, subruled by Mars, is the passion, but also a bit more edge. You can also see when it comes to the edge that Uranus and Mars are in a square. So that gives this person an appreciation of being provocative. Mars is the most prominent planet in the whole chart, so it is going to be very important. It's about pushing boundaries. However, if we dive a little deeper, that cluster of energy in her 12th house points towards someone who could think about things very deeply. Obviously, with the Virgo ascendant and the moon on it, someone who has a great appreciation of their immediate environment. But I feel that's the side of Madonna that has a real interest in psychology, healing, and anything to do with mythology and things like the Kabbalah. And in terms of her success, I feel that's driven a lot by the Sun and Jupiter being in a wonderful sextile, so potentially very fortunate. But if we look at that North Node, which I mentioned before, for her it's on a fixed star called Speaker, Spica, and people with planets on Speaker tend to be very prominent, can be hugely successful, and build up a big following. So the combination between the North Node and Jupiter suggests her life karma, her direction of travel, the North Node, has been about finding balance, interest in the arts, but definitely an ability to make money. So that's her natal chart. But let's look at Madonna's Draconic chart. So remember, the North Node is at 2402 in her natal. We go to a Draconic, and there is the North Node at 0 degrees Aries on the exact degree that this Saturn Neptune conjunction is happening. And that's why I wanted to tell you about it. Now, when I did share Madonna's chart a few years ago and said that she was a Leo, I had loads of people write to me and say, no, she's not, she's an Aquarius. But clearly, she is a Leo because she's born on the 16th of August. But in the Draconic version of the chart, her sun is on the anaretic degree of Capricorn. So this is a person with a real instinct for business, but also perhaps with the flavor of progressiveness that comes from Aquarius energy, which is the combination still of Pluto and Mercury, very analytical, but uh, the combination of the ascendant and the moon in Aquarius is very much more to do with being groundbreaking than the Virgo in her natal chart, which can be someone who wants to provide services, is very detail orientated, very organized. She may be all of those things, but in this chart, the more radical part of her nature really is that much more visible. She still has the need to perhaps be more meditative, quiet, take time out of the limelight with the 12th house energy. And also, Saturn in the fourth house means that, you know, home and family is important to her. And I think it's right that she's adopted some children. So that shows a great responsibility and a great empathy to look after those who are less fortunate. But that combination of the planets stay in the same relationship, so we have the same aspect. We still have Uranus in a square with Mars, but Mars here is also very close to Speaker in a nature chart. So as Mars, Draconic conjunct the North Node and Jupiter in her natal. And, the ninth house is about expansion, it's about risk, independence. Uh, it is true that Mars is technically detrimented, but in this illustration, you can see that the Moon and Mars still very strong, so she's a great communicator. So, what the principles of Draconic astrology are is that they're the root of who we are. So, when we come into this world, Draconic's the root of our personality, and the natal is the fruit that comes from the tree of life that we go through. So, if we really work at it, we can see the outcome of our life physical journey much more like the natal chart. But some people find the Draconic chart represents their personalities much more. For example, my Draconic midpoint, sun and moon, is Cancer, and I am very much a home lover. And people who are close to me, been close to me for a very long time, I value those relationships very much. So, if you'd like to understand the difference between your natal chart and your Draconic chart, just like I've shared for Madonna, you can order your Draconic 12-month forecast and get your character analysis, your Draconic Life Roadmap report. And if you apply Draco 26 at the checkout, you'll get 50% off. But also, if you would like to order your natal 12-month forecast and natal life roadmap report, if you apply Astro 26 at the checkout, you can get 50% off for those too.